speech, and I was listening earlier to Sanders' speech 5 days ago, and he went through majority of this, and he went clearly saying that criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic. And in general, he said that there is anti-Islam, Islamophobia, and he talked about like other issues. But in general, like yes, there is like that tendency, or there is that talk of people trying to criticize to uh, restrict any criticism of Israel and compare it to anti-Semitic. And I hope that it's not gonna pass any resolution. But to begin with, it's like anything that's been happening, and in different agencies as well. Like they are always trying to. I don't know. You've been in those meetings in the last couple of weeks, and I personally mentioned something about like they're trying very hard to occupy people's mouths from
Yeah.
saying the truth. So they have the influence, or they have the political power, they have the money, and they try very hard to do that. Personally, I still think that this revolution, let's call it, in the universities, part is like, in my opinion, what makes it continue is like people are afraid about their freedom. Yes, there is the Gaza issue, and that they have their asks of why they're doing what they're doing. But in the meantime, the power and the support that it's getting from too many different levels, and not only the students, it's because people are fearful of their freedom of speech, freedom of action, freedom of living, and being able to express their feelings. And I don't think it's and and it's really sad when it comes to only this topic of like Israel. When you criticize Israel, it becomes like the end of the world, and it needs to stop. It's like you can criticize the president in the US and nobody will question you. You can call the president in the US anything you want and nobody will question you. But in the meantime, if you criticize Israel, it's like you become the enemy with everybody,
Yeah.
or they try to make you the evil
Right.
everywhere. And it's like if you hear Sanders' speech, you will see like he even mentioned like you cannot say I'm supportive of Palestine and equalize make that equal to like support of Hamas, and that's what they're
Right.
trying to label it. So
Right.
they do they try, and they're gonna try, but let's hope that none of those resolutions gonna pass.
If uh, Bernie Sanders has made a speech, that means it's moved. It is a motion that's moved to the Senate. So it is something they're trying to pass.
I don't know if that speech was only for that, or it was
Okay. It
more
was
like,
a
I
he
think
spoke.
it was in, it's like I really don't know exactly,
Okay.
because I just heard the speech, but I wasn't sure
Okay.
like what's happening.
Okay.
But his
Well,
speech was about like awakening and trying to tell people in Congress
yeah.
that this movement in colleges, it's not new, and it's old, and this movement in colleges is what brought the change in the US
Yeah.
and the way of life in the US, all from the old years, not new. And he went through historically how different actions or different stands and different student stands all along the history, historically, how it changed the life and the policies
Absolutely.
in the US.
Some 40, almost 40 years. Oh, good heavens, that's a long time. Almost 40 years ago, in 1985, we had at Cal at Berkeley, um, we had protests, encampments, large demonstrations. for the UC system, University of California system, to divest in South Africa. And a year later, it wasn't personal to the United States. So, I never got to this level like it has with what's going on with Israel's behavior, but because we weren't personally, you understand it was different, but it was effective. And in 1986, the UC system divested. So there can be results. It's if allowed, free speech is allowed to work sometimes. I did hear that at least one university, I think I heard another one, has decided to divest. So that's some positive. It's not everything we want, but it's some positive movement, which was encouraging to hear.
But for whatever it's worth, like before any of this started, before October 7th, there was different states that they try to put laws against the divestment and against people who's calling for cutting relations with Israel. So there was some kind of like movement from different states supportive of Israel regarding to like divestment and all of those or anything has to do with it. And again, this is like where the power and the money is. Like it's
That's
really
what talks.
Yeah, that's what does. Exactly.
It does. It definitely does. Well, we're still having manifestations here in France, and it's encouraging to see that the morale is there. But yeah, so hope for the best.
So you are in France, is that correct?
Yes, I live in Normandy. I'm just south of the D-Day landing beaches, about a half-hour inland. If that gives you a geographic idea of
Yeah.
I'm
It's like
from San Francisco originally, but we've lived here for about 20 years.
But the question is like, regardless to where we are, it's like France, US, England, all of these. It's like, although you see what you see in the road, in the street, but again, it's like there is no justification for, and I don't know how much of a support this is because in general, the government policies towards Israel never changed, and it continues to be supportive.
And they thumb their noses. The Israeli government thumbs its nose at anything that the United Nations says to them. Any sanctions or any criticism or you're committing genocide, or no matter what the UN says, they don't care. Israel just continues. There's no weight behind it, which is where money talks. So if there's divestment, that could help. But yeah, it's complicated. I have heard from a couple of people here who support. One of them is my ex-husband, who is American, who is a very rational, reasonable person. But he has the same mentality about it as some people here do, which is that they agree that Israel's gone way too far if all they're doing is retaliating for October 7th, which is what they claim to be doing, of course. But it has no personal, how does he put it? No personal effect on his life. So he's not invested in it. He's not that interested in it, because Ukraine is a personal big deal for us because it's close. It does affect us, our daily lives. And if Putin succeeds there, all he has to do is turn to the right, and here we are, Europe. And he scares people here. Putin does, admittedly a scary guy. But they can't, a lot of people, they just can't see, they don't see enough of the parallels, but they can't see that, okay, yes, maybe Putin is an immediate threat to us, and what happens in Palestine is not going to affect our daily lives, but it could down the road just the same. And where's our humanitarian? It's not like we're asking people here to go physically put their lives in danger to help in Palestine. All we're asking for is moral support. And they can't bring themselves to do it because Ukraine is so important. And so I found that fascinating. It also made me grind my teeth in anger, but I found that interesting. Also, just for a bit of what goes on over here, there is still a lot of there's a lot of support for Palestine. There we have a lot of towns do have associations. They have marches every week. They do they do things. Um, Obviously on a much smaller scale than what would happen in American towns or in Paris or something. But the support is there. But I forgot where I was going to go with that. They do believe still in most of the propaganda that was put out as to what happened on October 7th. All the ridiculous stuff, raping women, that Hamas, the Palestinians that Hamas was doing this, raping Israeli women, decapitating babies, et cetera, and someone mentioned one day that they even read the statement put out by Hamas, wherein Hamas admitted to having done all these things, which I tend not to believe. I have not seen this myself. I don't know where this document is.
No, I think this is
I'm sure it's on Google somewhere.
No, there is. I think clearly, and I'm not here to support or deny anything. Although I am a Palestinian, but based on like the information that is out there, there is no proof of rape. There is
the laundry list of grievances against Hamas.
There is a number of children, but it's not even. It's not even like it's like the killing of children. Nobody is supported killing people, period. No. Not only children, but when it comes to children, it's even more important.
Yeah.
But even with the children, the number is very limited.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, which really we will see after a while when Israel starts releasing the information, which normally happens after 50, 60, 70 years, or we're not going to be sometimes after maybe 10 or 20, depending on like how secure it's like what they're trying to hide. But after a while from an incident, they start releasing the information, and the information that shows the truth. The majority, or there is a talk about like the higher number of killing was because of the involvement of Israeli aeroplanes and Israeli militants going around and killing or shooting left or right, regardless to who they were, without like giving attention of what they were doing. And a number of these numbers is going to be clearer when they themselves release the information, because until now there is no such information available to show like it's like whatever they call it, friendly fire killings.
I heard about that. Yeah, they do.
I don't know how many of those or how much of this information is available and when they're going to make it available. And this is like it's not me talking about it. It's like their media from all over around the world talking about it. So
well, it's frustrating to me to see people, intelligent people, choosing to believe, because this has been kind of the conventional wisdom for so long, and they choose to still believe it. And just because it's out there, it's like, well, you can dig and find the truth these days very easily sometimes. So anyway, so that's what's been going on this side. But the protests and the support continues, so that's the good news.
That's great. It needs to continue in order for it to make a difference somehow.
It does.
And start influencing the politicians and the decision makers around the world.
Yeah. Well, that's where I know there had been a concern as the time has gone on that public support, I don't know if that's the right term, but public support, the manifestations, the social media presence. Oh my goodness, thank God for social media these days. It's all over everything I look at these days. And that's effective too. And there had been a concern that all this support would die off over time. And here it's been, God help us, 7 months, and it seems to grow, the support. So that's encouraging. We can only hope those who need to listen will hear. But that's a positive thing that the support is continued. It's encouraging.
Definitely.
Yeah. May I ask a question about something in the Quran? If someone wants to engage in a conversation, another topic. The subject, and excuse me, my Arabic is very limited, so words I don't use regularly, I don't remember. But I'll just say the story of the night journey and ascent to heaven that Muhammad took. I've been talking with a friend a lot about it lately, and we've been reading and searching. And this isn't a point of our faith or anything, so it ends up coming down to more of an intellectual exercise, as far as I'm concerned. But what we find is a lot more evidence that there was no journey to heaven at all, and the so-called the night journey was something of it was Moses and not Muhammad, according to how the story is presented in the Quran. But it never says specifically in exactly so many words, this person did this thing at this time. And so we've kind of come to that understanding instead of what is quite obviously the, I'll call it conventional wisdom, that it was Moses, and excuse me, that it was Muhammad. And I don't know. I'm kind of curious how much of I've never heard anyone bring this up until I was talking to this friend recently. And then when I look online, I kind of see conversations. I see that people do have other understandings. But it's not something we really ever hear about, or certainly it's never come up in a Friday sermon when it comes to be that time of year. It's always laid at down as an experience of the prophet. And yeah, so I'm just kind of curious, how is a different view, if people believe that it was Moses, not Muhammad, how is that viewed within the Muslim community? It's not kufar, it's not, it's not going to send me directly to hell or anything, but is it, I don't know, what's the is there a feeling, or is it such a minority school of thought that it just is never paid any attention to?
Just like I do have a question to you now to answer your question.
Okay.
And to please any of you guys, but the question to you is like, does it make a difference if it's Prophet Moses or Prophet Muhammad? It doesn't deny. It's like if we say it's Prophet Musa or Prophet Muhammad, does this make a difference or deny the story of Isra and Miraj?
Oh, to me, not at all.
Okay,
it's not a question of faith. It's not a question of
no. It's I'm just trying to confirm. It's like I'm just trying to confirm a couple of things before, like, so this is one, so it does not make a difference. It's like in the Quran, there is more stories about Prophet Moses than Prophet Muhammad, and Prophet Moses mentioned a lot more in the stories. That's what I'm trying to be more specific. And the other prophets are mentioned probably a lot more than Prophet Muhammad in a lot of the cases in the Quran. So having said that, so it doesn't matter, but like the story is accurate, and it happened. Like there is, it's like based on like your question, you're not denying, or based on the conversation and the question, that we're not denying that this event existed and it happened.
Okay,
Is that correct?
I'm not the ascent to heaven. I am still questioning
Oh,
because I
so
think a lot, but the night journey, as far as I'm concerned, from what I see, is more likely the I'm going to call it proof. The is it makes more sense that it was Moses than that it was. I'm not denying that God is perfectly capable of having any miracle happen, in, within our understanding or beyond it. I have no doubt whatsoever about that.
I'm not an expert. That's why I raised the first
Yeah,
question. So
but I just
the not denying that the event happened. That's good. It's like we are in agreement that other prophets are mentioned in the Quran more than Prophet Muhammad. But again, there is the chapter in Quran which is Al-Isra, Surah Al-Isra,
exactly.
which talks about the event, and that is specifically mentioning, and it's like this is where the description about the Isra and what we need to know as Muslims about what happened in the Isra. There is like a lot of hadiths from what Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said after the event happened, that we take from that history to enrich our knowledge about what happened and what he have seen. And that's all what we can talk about. Like it is happened to Prophet Muhammad. It is happened to Prophet Muhammad visit and praying with the other prophets in Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. And he described that, and that is mentioned through the history. And the explanation of the first ayahs in Surah Al-Isra describes that. Other than that, it's like I'm sure that there is a lot more knowledgeable people around us or among us who can say more into, like, if it was how it's mentioned the Prophet Muhammad and what was about Prophet Muhammad more or not. But truthfully, like, this is, it's like I have heard something else. It's like some people say, oh, maybe it was a dream. I was thinking maybe you would say something like that. But again, it's like the events and of the surah denies that it was a dream. Again, I don't know.
Well, that's it. Taking from what my reading, and this came up when I was reading again during Ramadan, and it just kind of caught my attention, and I asked somebody, so we were talking about it, and the because in the Quran, which is the basis and what we go back to first before hadith, is it doesn't say clearly this person did this thing on this, but when we put it together, the way it appears to me is that it is more likely to have been Moses. And when then you take the hadith, we know that even though they are, is the word sahih, when they're like the chain of, I hear a lot of this in French, so it's hard to remember in English. When the chain of transmission is really good, really strong. Even
Hadith
if
Sahih.
Sahih, thank you. So even if this is the case, it could still be wrong. It could still be that it's not what he actually said, because once one person it's like the game of telephone. Once one person has repeated it, they're honest and good people, but it can still get twisted. It might be wrong. So when we go through our criteria of, is a hadith one that we, I don't know, that I don't want to say believe in, but a hadith that he really said, the prophet, we have our criteria, I do, of how I choose. I'm expressing myself very badly. I'm so sorry. I was not planning to say anything about
It's okay.
This.
It's okay. But there is
I think
a story.
I mean,
There is a story. There is a story I do remember when I
yes.
was younger, and I think people repeat the story about like how Quraysh, people in Mecca, responded to when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Oh, I was on a journey in Jerusalem," because even when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam shared the events of that event of Isra al Mi'raj with the people of Mecca, he didn't start by saying the whole story. So part of the story that he said to the people of Mecca, he said, "Oh, I visited Jerusalem and I came back last night." Right? And if you look at this, it's like, for me, living in the US today, I look at this as like, it made sense to me why he started saying part of the story and he didn't say the other, because here we are with our limited mind and with limited knowledge and the tools that they had. It's like when somebody had to spend a month or whatever, 40 days, there is a specific time of like how long it took somebody riding on a camel to cross the desert and from Mecca to Jerusalem. And here we are. It's like he comes in and say, "I visited last night and I came back." It becomes more like, "Oh, you're a liar," and that's what they actually called him. "You're a liar." And they asked Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who was his closest friend,
Right.
and the first Khalifa. They asked him, "Oh, your friend is going crazy. He said that he visited Jerusalem and he last night and he came back." He said, "If he said that, means it's the truth." You know what I mean? So so there is a lot of information or through our history or our sira, let's call it, that confirms that the event happened with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and not other, or not Moses and not Isa's. And I think there is no reason. It's like, and again, I go back to the first point. There is no reason for Muslims to deny if it happened with Prophet Musa and not Prophet Muhammad, because again, there is so many different stories in the Quran and in the Sirah from the Prophet that talks about what happened to Prophet Musa, what happened to Prophet Isa, what happened to Maryam alayhi salam. You know what I mean? So that question to begin with, it's like, it's not accurate to begin with, but there might be more information about like the event of Isra al-Mi'raj and what actually happened, that I think Prophet Suhail talks about in his khutbah, and I heard about his during his khutbahs many times talking about that. Maybe he can share with us if he's on the phone.
Well, I think it's an accurate question. I mean, Iqra, after all, we're supposed to ask and not just accept it because everyone says that's the way it is. So I think the question is valid.
I'm not saying
which I don't think you're
question.
attacking. I apologize.
No. I'm not. I'm sorry.
But the question is
it's
good.
Like, I just want to be clear. I want to be clear. Like, it's like, I'm sorry. I'm not denying the question as much as I'm saying like the accuracy of the question and the answer here, right? It's like if it was Prophet Musa alayhi salam, I think it would be clear, and there is no reason for any Muslim to deny that it happened with Prophet Musa alayhi salam, as the question stated. I'm not saying you or your friend or whoever. It's like there would be no reason to deny it or say Prophet Muhammad did that. It's like there would be no reason, in my opinion.
I mean, these are like questions that, I mean, you can go nowhere with them, because I mean, I never heard that somebody claiming that it is Prophet Musa. I mean, the Prophet Musa had his own miracles, like Allah talked to him directly. But the bottom line is that the Isra, that the first part of the trip is confirmed explicitly by the Quran. The second part is not. These people accepted. There were vast majority of Muslims, but there are some people who question whether it happened or not, the Mi'raj. But because there was no implications, I mean, there was no like beliefs or worship acts that basically, if you question Mi'raj, then
Right.
that becomes a religious problem or belief problem. This is what some people choose to do. That some people choose to make every issue in Islam issue of iman and kufr, and anybody who raises any questions or challenge anything that is established or accepted, then their iman becomes questionable, and that's basically led to complete stagnation, intellectual stagnation, and freezing, because people are afraid to even ask questions. People
Well,
are
I'm
afraid.
not.
People are afraid to raise questions. People are afraid to challenge anything.
Yeah.
So there is one prevalent version of Islam that is imposed on everybody and accepted, and you don't have even the right to ask questions, because even asking questions can put you in trouble. And that's very bad, because there are very few things in Islam where there is only one single interpretation, or there is one version of understanding. These are very, very few things. The vast majority of Islam, vast majority of verses accept more than one interpretations. And that's why in the same tafsir, you'll find 2 or 3 interpretations of the same verse. And sometimes they're not even close.
Right.
And that's the nature of the religion. I mean, it was designed to be like that. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals a book in Arabian Peninsula, in Mecca and Medina at that time, and it is meant to be valid for all places and all times until the day of judgment, and you expect it not to be flexible? How? Life is evolving, so the only way that fixed book can keep up with lives is 2 things. One is the built-in flexibility, and 2 is ijtihad, is that people have to keep exercising their intellectual creativity to find what are the best ways of implementing the verses, understanding them first, and then implementing them to achieve the ultimate purposes of religion, of maqasid, or to fulfill the mission of Islam. The moment you drop that idea of mission and that idea of ultimate purposes of Islam, then you're going to stick to the literal meaning, and then it's going to be a fixed meaning forever that will never change or will never. So we, as I mentioned this last Jumu'ah, I mean, we have a great religion. We are the ones who made it very superficial, very rigid, and very narrow. But it is very inspiring, very empowering. It was meant to be guidance, not law. It was meant to be hudan, guidance, to guide life and inform life. It was not meant to be a book of laws. And very few laws that were mentioned specifically in Quran, because there is a reality that Quran has to deal with. You can't just keep talking about stating principles, because Quran was revealed in a particular reality that has its own challenges. There used to be slaves in Mecca. You cannot ignore that. Or in Medina. You cannot say, you know what, slavery is wrong, stop it tomorrow. It's not going to happen, because it was an integral part of the economy. And so Quran had those verses to fix it gradually until it was eliminated. But those verses, now you read them, they don't apply, because there are no slaves anymore. So Quran could not ignore that reality at that time and just say one verse, slavery is wrong, whoever has slaves, just free them. And that's it, problem is solved. That's how the law works, but not the guidance that is meant to fix, to tackle the roots of the problem. So we had that gradual solution until this bad phenomena, this terrible phenomena, disappeared completely. Because you make a mistake, kafara, free a slave. You want to donate, free a slave. The zakat money goes to freeing slaves. So you tackle this from all angles until it disappeared. And same thing with alcohol.
Mhm.
So there are verses nowadays, if you read them, they don't apply because they were meant to fix a problem gradually until we get to the last verse that says this is just forbidden. You just have to stop.
Because
But
people
when did
can't
this?
follow the rules.
Yeah, but that's for the last segment of people. But gradually, the companions, they were stopping drinking. From each verse that is revealed, a group of the companions will stop, and then another group, and then another group, and then we left with the small or minority. That's when there is a rule. That's it. This is haram. You just have to stop it. But I mean, some of them from the first verse. The first verse was in Surah An-Nahl. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِن ثَمَرَاتِ النَّخِيلِ وَالْأَعْنَابِ تَتَّخِذُونَ مِنْهُ سَكَرًا وَرِزْقًا حَسَنًا. That from the fruits of grapes and dates, you do two things. You do good things and you do something else. So someone like Umar ibn Khattab said, oh, something else meaning bad. So why it was contrasted to good things? تَتَّخِذُونَ مِنْهُ سَكَرًا وَرِزْقًا حَسَنًا. So it was contrasted with good things. It means that this using it for to make wine or to make beer, that's something bad. So some people from there, they got it. And then, of course, don't approach prayer while drunk. تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى. So people start to realize that this is something that is bad and it's not consistent with يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس. That they ask you about drinking and gambling, say that there are some benefits in them for people, but there is the sin outweighs the benefit. And then until we get إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه. So you can see this is something that I don't know why it was not emphasized enough, that Quran was doing two things at the same time, and therefore there are two different categories of verses. Quran was meant to be guidance for people until the day of judgment. And these, in this part, it was mentioning principles, motivating people to do good, strengthening people abilities to restrain themselves and avoid haram, etc. So it was all inspiration, and Quran was fixing a bad reality at that time where women was abused. You're talking about society in which women were, the girls were buried alive.
Right.
So Quran had to deal with that. You cannot say, okay, women equal rights and everything is fine, and you can't. There is the reality that you have to deal with. So it came to solve, to resolve those, to address those issues that people are facing. And then there are challenges that Muslims faced when they were conveying the message. So Quran is full of responses to the challenges and the questions that were raised in the face of Muslims at that time. They tell you this, respond this way. Some of those may not exist anymore. Some of them, they're still there. Some challenges or doubts that people try to instill in religion, they may be still there. Some of them, they're not. So gonna have منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب. There are verses that are, they state principles, and there are verses that are contextuals. And I understand that it is not easy to distinguish which is which, but the solution is not to make them all محكمات or all principles. No, that's the easy solution. It's like the other extreme, which is to make them all contextuals. No, there are verses that state timeless principles, and there are verses that were revealed to fix problems or to address certain problems. The word kafir in Quran, it does not mean, it has specific meaning. Why? Because the kafir at that time was 99.9% someone who was fighting Muslims. There was no peaceful kafir. That was very small minority. So You find verses that say kill them or etc. These are contextuals. All the verses about fighting are contextual. My understanding is the only verse that is fixed or principle when it comes to fighting is وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Fight those who are fighting you and do not exceed the limits. Like someone comes to attack you, push them back, but don't go further. That's it. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ. That's a principle. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. وَإِنْ جَنَحُوا لِلسَّلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا وَأَعِدُّ لَهُمْ. Prepare, be strong to deter others from attacking you. So that was meant to actually establish peace. And that's something that is widely accepted nowadays, that when you are strong, you deter, not to attack people, but to deter people from attacking you. So the other verses, most of them are contextual. At that time, you're talking about emergent community in Medina that was attacked left and right. Quraysh was trying to wipe out Medina altogether, like that they did with the Battle of Ahzab. That was the purpose. Actually, even the Battle of Uhud, the purpose was to wipe out completely. And you have all those tribes in the Arabian Peninsula who were hostile, basically. So you're talking about a specific situation may not exist nowadays. So, and again, ijtihad is tough, is difficult. It's not comfortable because, especially for lazy people, it's risky, but it's unavoidable. You just cannot avoid it. I mean, if you're gonna avoid anything that is risky, then you don't go out of your house, because driving is risky. Everything is there. So it is risky. It is tough. But to make it taboo, to make everything taboo, that's what we started the discussion. That don't ask, don't question. Anybody who raises the question becomes kafir. No. There are very few things that are, one, clear cut. Second, do not accept two interpretations, more than one interpretations, and these are mostly matter of beliefs. Because the moment you go to fiqh, then it is widely open. But it is matter of aqidah, and even in aqidah, you know, there is Salafi and Ash'ari and this and that. Even in matters of aqidah, there are differences. And the only thing that we need to focus on is managing differences, stop judging, managing differences, and stop trying to eliminate them, because they are not going to go anywhere. Differences will remain until the day of judgment. You have two people who are twins, born in the same family, at the same time, in the same era, in the same neighborhood, go to the same school, yet they are different. They think differently, they have different preferences, etc. How can you make people copy of one another?
And that wouldn't be the freedom that the Quran gives us.
Yeah, I mean, it was,
if everyone was the same.
Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not impose his believing in him. He did not impose it on people. And you have someone who tried to impose their understanding of Islam and make their understanding of Islam equivalent to the religion itself. Please, whenever you speak, don't say this is Islam. Always add to it, this is my understanding of Islam, or that's what I believe in, or that's what I accept, etc. The scholars used to say this. Imam Malik and Shafi and others, top scholars, and they were always either I don't know, or that's what they came up with. They never said this is the religion itself. There are no spokesperson for the religion. The moment Prophet Muhammad ﷺ died, everything that happened after that is a human effort and human human attempts of interpreting the Quran. Why? Because there is something that ended with the death of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which is for Quran to be revealed to tell you, no, this is right and that's wrong. Because that's what used to happen before. It used to happen before. Quran will be revealed to give them lessons from an incident or what went right and what went wrong. So there was the stamp of the Quran on some action, and there was action that were rejected. But that's not the case anymore. Anything that happened 1 minute after the death of Rasulullah became a human. Why? Because there is no Quran to be revealed to say whatever Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu did is the right thing to do, or those who disagreed with him are the ones who are right. There was no Quran revealed to confirm that. That's why we need really to stop talking about conspiracy. The biggest conspiracy that was done against Islam was done by Muslims. The biggest conspiracy is to take a great religion, very inspiring, that gives people mission and purpose and high and cause and high purposes to work for, and turned into laws and rituals, turned into a short list of do's and don'ts, rituals that you have to do to avoid punishment, and things that you have to avoid also so that you don't get punished. It's a paradigm. It's a very nice package, very comprehensive package. Mm-hmm. And then we reduced it to a couple of things. Again, we made it superficial, narrow, and rigid, and we turned into a short list of do's and don'ts. And why we have to do that? Why we have to do these? You just have to do them because otherwise you're going to be punished. That's it. I mean, that's this whole great religion turns out to parents asking their children to pray so that you're not going to be thrown in hellfire. That's all.
No.
So, Dr. Suhail, just so I can understand like the story of Isra and Mi'raj even a little bit better, it's like what we were discussing earlier. It's like the first part was like about like why Prophet Musa, and you just mentioned like as you're talking about this, like Prophet Musa, this is the first time that you hear it. It was the first time I hear it. So, my question is like, Prophet, it's like, can't we just say? And again, I'm just trying to practice. It's like I'm just trying to practice one thing at a time here. Mm-hmm. The one thing is like Prophet Musa alayhi salam was mentioned in the Quran in too many different stories. So if we take that argument aside and we try to look into Al-Isra al-Mi'raj, Al-Isra is mentioned in the first parts of Surah Al-Isra, which confirms the visit of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Jerusalem, praying with the different prophets. Now, the visit to the heavens and seeing and witnessing all of the other stories, those other stories is based on the hadith. Is that kind of correct? And the hadiths and whatever the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam shared with Muslims during the time,
and implicit, not explicit verses.
That's exactly.
There are some verses, kind of Sidrat al-Muntaha. There are some verses that had that interpretation that is about the Mi'raj, but not as explicit as the first of Surah Al-Isra.
Got it. Thank you.
I don't recall reading in the Quran, if you're saying that it says in the Quran that Muhammad went and prayed with the other prophets, etc. I don't recall ever reading that, but I memorized the Quran.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mention that he prayed. Pray, do the other prophet, or let the prayer. That also came from Sunnah, but the only
open to discussion.
Yeah, the only explicit verse was the first verse of Surah Al-Isra that does not accept any other interpretation. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى.
So the question,
very explicit, very.
Yes.
I'm looking it up because I don't have it. There it is.
Just
Sorry.
Prophet, Dr. Suhail, just to confirm, Subhana alladhi asra bi'abdihi here is Prophet Muhammad, or we cannot, isn't this what it meant? I'm just trying to confirm because that's what
it is Prophet Muhammad, yeah, because
Okay.
again, yeah. Abdi, he was mentioned also in Surah Al-Furqan, in Surah Al-Kahf. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب تبارك الذي نزل الفرقان على عبده. So it's not the only place where it is Prophet Muhammad that it means Prophet, and because Quran was also revealed to him at that time. So it was clearly not a story of another prophet. Otherwise it would have been mentioned. And Surah Al-Isra did not have, I mean, at least those verses did not have mentioning of the stories of prophets. So it was clearly Prophet Muhammad sallallahu and no, I don't think I never heard anybody questioning the Isra. The only debate was about Mi'raj.
But we're out there. We do discuss it.
No, I'm talking about the first part.
No, the first part. There is other understanding of it. I wish my question actually was not to have it clarified for me that it's Muhammad, not Moses. And I did not. If it had been, I would have come with my notes on the subject, because I am fully unprepared to have a lucid discussion of explaining how we've come to this understanding. But my question was poorly worded. How is a different view, a different understanding that maybe it's someone other than Muhammad? How is that viewed within the Muslim community? I mean, I know there are people who are going to say, "Oh, you're a kufar, you're going to hell." But I don't listen to those people about anything. But when there are differences, well, for instance, okay, so if the part of the ascent to heaven is something that is not strictly believed in by everyone, it's open for discussion. How are the people who say, "Yeah, I don't think so"? How are they viewed generally, or does it not come? I don't know. I'm just curious what the, in Christianity, if you don't believe in something that everyone believes in, non-Trinitarian Christians really badly looked upon. So I'm just wondering how, this won't change how I feel about things, but I'm just curious if I interpret something like this, which is completely non-essential to my faith and my belief in God and the last day and what I believe in as a Muslim. It's more an intellectual point. But if I don't believe in what is the conventional wisdom, how badly are people like that looked upon? That was my question.
That's something that
For the rest, I'll come back with my notes next week.
next time, inshallah.
Yeah. So anyway, but thank you for entertaining my queries. I appreciate it.
Dr. Suhail left, is that correct, Bassem?
Looks like a few people have left, yeah. Well, thank you, I appreciate it. I will,
No problem. This was.
I will come with my notes and my. I was not expecting to give a defense of my thesis, but.
No. This is. It has nothing. It's like, as you hear, to sometimes. It's like I do want to be lost in the weeds, so I tried to mention what I understood. As I mentioned earlier, it's like the way I understood it. So I'm glad that Prophet Dr. Suhail was able to help explain, and hopefully we discuss this later on, or you bring your notes and we hear more to learn more about it.
Yeah,
it is interesting, but I always thought like it was a clear maybe it's not. It's like as he read the surah bi'abdihi here it meant Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it was mentioned bi'abdihi in multiple verses in the Quran. So that is a good take to keep in mind. Because
Well,
in the
that's
Quran,
it.
it's not necessary that it was mentioned Prophet Muhammad by name.
No.
He was
Cool.
called by Abd.
It says here, because now I do have the book open, it's exalted is he who took his servant, not naming. So that could be anybody. Well, probably, it's a limited pool of people, but still. And it comes down to when it says from al-Masjid al-Haram to al-Masjid al-Aqsa, and there are interpretations of understandings of what those mean. And that's where some of that comes in. But then there's other things later on. I will get my notes together. And if anybody is willing to hear about it, I will share, and I'm willing to be educated on the topic. But I should come with my information clearly laid out. That would
perfect.
That would be better. So
have a good day. Thank you.
Well, you two have a wonderful picnic. I'll be thinking of you all.
Bye.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.